You're watching Badass Lady Folk. I'm your host, Christine Stoddard. In this episode, I'm so overjoyed to welcome NJ Agwuna. Hi!
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Great.
What's new with you?
Life. Generally, right now I'm working as a Club Thumb fellow. And so we're developing a new work. I'm working with an amazing playwright, Nina Key, and they and I are working on this play called Origin Story, which is about their life as a queerian.
Ooh.
Which is like a queer Korean.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. New vocab for me. So what exactly are you doing with this play? What is your fellowship? What does it mean?
So Club Thumb has been around for like a long time. And they have been trying to find ways for rising directors and playwrights to collaborate and work on theater in a space. And so they kind of teamed up with playwrights. And they've been doing this new play development. So their Summer Works and their Winter Works festival for some time now. And I'm a part of this cohort. And our show goes up in January, but we have two presentations in December. And we're working with a cast of actors to really massage the work and like figure out on our feet how to really do work in theater, you know? So it's not just like a lot of table work. We're like, okay, we've read it, we're on our feet and like working in that sort of development so that it's more lived in and live.
Yeah, congratulations. That sounds so exciting.
Thank you.
And you've done such a range of different kinds of theater and performance in general. You've done commercial and more experimental, do you like that word? Or how do you feel about that word?
I think it fits for a lot of things, like experimental and new plays and classic plays and immersive theater and opera.
Yeah. So how do you navigate all these different kinds of theater pieces? Whatever pays the bills.
I tend to do a mix of what Chuck Mee says and one of my professors, Brian Kulick, said, where it's like, you know, you have your passion project and then you also have like, this is the money project. This is the one that like, I am still in the industry, but I have to make money right now. So there are projects for the soul, and then there are also projects where I'm like, this is really good for like networking, to move ahead. I think every experience is a learning experience. So it's like turning your trauma into a lesson.
Wow.
It's a lot of therapy as well. It goes in there.
Yeah. Well, so what would you say your passion is then?
My passion is telling stories in a collaborative way. So telling a collaborative story, the medium is live theater and occasionally film. Like when I was younger, I had this huge dream. I was like, I'm going to be Julie Taymor. I'm going to be a crossover director and like Joe Mantello and like be able to work in film and theater. And living is like realizing how hard it is, but still kind of moving towards that goal and that dream. So a lot of times it's like, what is the collective story that we as people want to tell or need to hear? You know what I mean? Like, given the current state of the world, I'm finding that it needs to be more joy. And some of the conflict needs to be a little mundane, but or in terms of like what we can actually digest, you know, whereas before it felt like it needed to be fueled by the political, but like even in that, even in a lot of my political plays, it's like finding where's the humanity in that. So after the 2016 election, we did a show called Town Hall, in which we were like all devastated and we were like, what are we going to do? And my collaborators and I, we devised a piece based off of a lot of moment work techniques and just asking our classmates and like colleagues and like different folks, we were like, hey, we have this Google survey. Please send this to your friends and family. And it was like, okay, how do you feel about the election? And who cares about you? And what do you care about? And we found it was like, oh, my family cares about me and I care about my family, and trying to find that. And then in our research, we looked at a lot of town hall speeches and like things from like, you know, local truckers who were like, I don't think anybody cares about me right now, and the farming, just my family. And it was like, that's where our disparity was, and it was all in the transcripts. And so we like used some of those transcripts, and we were also finding ways for the actors to like bring some of their stories and like the stories that they were latching onto based off of what was happening in the news cycle, and made an entire show just where it was like the audience didn't know what they were voting for. Like we were going from town hall to town hall. So it was like starting in New York, we went to like Florida, we went to the Midwest, we went to California, and then came back, and then they realized, oh, we were voting on a song and what song it was going to be at the end.
Wow.
It was like that kind of performance, and then we had like breakout things. And it was a fun time, and like some of them were like from PTA meetings because that was like really entrenched in that cycle. And that was like a really fun show.
I love that you mentioned the word joy and the word fun. So could you talk about bringing happiness and humor and light to creative work and how those things can be political?
Yeah, I think finding the places where our humanity meets some of our like more staunch opinions and morals and things like that is the way that we can move into our joy. And like that can be infused in the rehearsal room, in the way that we like set up the space, and like the way that we bring people to the piece. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was like, you know, sometimes I just hire people on vibes. Like, it's vibes. We're here, and it's like, actually, I think you'll get along with like this team. And it's finding those people in those vibes. And I've started to bring that into a lot of audition processes, where I'm, especially for classic work, because anytime you're doing Shakespeare, the people who are auditioning know the Shakespeare. I'm like, you know it. I saw your thing. This is great. We're going to have an interview first so that I can ascertain whether they're the type of person that you want to bring into the room, especially because everyone always comes in with the nerves. And once you sit down, like all of those nerves go away. So having an interview process so that it's like, not just me being like, okay, can I work in a room with you? You being like, can I work in a room with you? And your queerness. And it's like, yeah, let's see how this goes. And then going into the text and being like, great.
Wow.
Let's do that. And also bringing elements of like play into the audition process. I remember I did Tempest, and I wanted to set it in a post-Katrina New Orleans. And the thing that like really got me like my jumping off point was in 2005 when Kanye West, now whatever he is. But before then, when we were rocking with Kanye, and he said George Bush doesn't like black people, I was like, that's interesting. And now all of the politicians are going down to, you know, New Orleans and like standing in like feet of water, being like, we're gonna help you. And I was like, this is very Tempesty, you know?
Right.
And you get to talk about like climate change, but with Shakespeare in that sense. So it was fun exploring that. But in the callback process, I brought in a lot of props, and I was like, I saw from your auditions that you already know the text. The reason you're being called back is to see if you can play and create moments, you know? So I would just like leave them in a room with my stage manager, and I'd be like, I want you to create the storm. Here are some props.
What were some of the props?
We had sheets, we had boxes, like the rehearsal boxes and things like that, clip lights. It was like, let's We had music instruments, so we had like bongos, lutes, things like that, where I was like, great, create the storm. Or let's look at sibling dynamics. So like between Prospero and I was like, let's look at a sibling dynamic. Can you tell me a wordless story together as siblings?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I want to shift to your work as an intimacy coordinator.
Sure.
Because it seems like there's a lot of misunderstanding of what that even means.
Yeah.
So could you tell me what it means as
Sure.
someone who does it?
And I got into intimacy coordinating because I also do fights.
Okay.
And so it was like in doing fight choreography, I was like, oh, that is just another investment into the stories that we're telling. So intimacy coordination must be the same. And it is. It is an investment into the stories, but taking a different approach, a different look at it, where it's like we're all still telling the same story, but in a collaborative process. And intimacy coordination is so that we can get that consent and enthusiastic consent. As a coordinator working under directors, it's about how to align the director's vision and like what they want for like the show with what the actors are comfortable, capable, and enthusiastic about. So a lot of times it's a lot of liaison work where you're going back and forth to be like, okay, we're getting to the nitty gritty. We're like, what kind of camera angles do you want? What is the level of nudity? How spontaneous do you want this to feel? Or how artistic do you want this to feel? Are there going to be close-ups? Like that kind of thing. And then really getting into that so that it's very transparent so the actors know exactly what they're going in for. So if we're like, all right, the director is like talking full nudity. Let's see how comfortable you are with that and like what are the barriers we need to get in order to do some of these scenes, because some of them aren't even like sex scenes. Some of them are just like this person walks in nude and it's like, yeah, I'm okay with my butt being shown. And we're like, we can guarantee that we'll make sure that nothing else gets seen.
Yeah.
You know what
So
I mean?
how do you gauge comfort and enthusiasm in this professional context where there's not a date that happens first?
Yeah. It's a lot of conversations, and also in the choreography, we're also having people do body scans. We're having them meet each other, and we're talking about what the boundaries they already have are. We're not negotiating them. We're just illuminating folks on the boundaries that they have, and then we're working within those contexts. So a lot of times we're able to like find more of that spontaneity even in the choreography. So it is 1 to 2. We're talking about like even for some kisses, we're like the duration. This is how long this kiss should last. You know what I mean? That's what they're comfortable with. Or this person is not comfortable with tongue. Or like suddenly someone has like a cold sore and we're like, okay, what side is the camera on? So that we can like really navigate that as well, that you're still getting the story that it was intended to tell, but everyone feels good about it. Everyone is aware of what is being seen, and there are no surprises.
How should performers communicate their boundaries?
As best as possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They can only know what they know, It like sometimes on the day you'll find out that it's like actually that spot in my back is very tender because, I was deadlifting or something. And so then we're like, okay, maybe we move above a little bit. So it's still giving that still proximity, and we're checking in, and we have people check in with themselves constantly. And a part of intimacy coordination is that we also check in, and then sometimes in film, people forget that the actor has been there sitting there nude. And part of our job is also to make sure that someone is on there with like a robe so that in between shots, as they're fixing lighting, you're not just like, I'm just hanging out here doing whatever. But in addition to that, it's also about like the crews. You know what I mean? Like, people just assume that everybody on the crew is okay with nudity, simulated sex, the degree of sex, like that kind of thing, especially if it's a more complicated story.
Yeah.
And not everybody is. So we're trying to make sure that we have closed sets. We're looking at those type of protocols to make sure that it's not just the actors and the director, but everyone is consenting to what's happening and they're aware of what's happening and some of the implications. I did a project in which some of the implications had to do with racial identity. So it was like also checking in with everyone of that same race in the crew to be like, okay, this is what is going to happen in this scene. I just want you to be informed about what's happening. And then when we go into it, having that happen and then checking in with everyone afterwards to be like, how are you doing? You know, maybe we do need a break or maybe we can keep pushing forward in that sense.
So why do you think some of these assumptions about people's comfort levels exist?
Oh, can you clarify that question?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the answer is society. Just that we're overstimulated and there are sexual images everywhere, it seems like. And
Yeah.
so I wonder why someone might think, oh, everyone on set is okay with there being a beautiful naked person.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's overstimulation or things like that, but people, I think, have gotten accustomed to just saying yes to
Right.
keep the job.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So like it stemmed from actors first just saying yes to be like, please don't fire me.
Right.
I'll do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
like later on having, you know, these post-traumatic effects that they didn't understand the roots of. You know what I mean? And we are also trauma-informed specialists, a lot of us, that have gone through a lot of workshops in terms of like what to do in certain cases. It's also like working with minors. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times some child actors, it's like this kiss that they're having on screen, that's their first kiss.
Yeah.
And that is awkward. You know what I mean? And it's the whole world is watching you have this stage and this kiss and the repercussions and the things like that, you know what I mean? And talking to them about it, but also talking to their parents about it as well as to what is happening in this space. Or do we need doubles, you know? Because a lot of times, sometimes it'll be the nudity, it's like, actually, I'm not okay or I'm not comfortable with my body, my full body being shown. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, great. Are you okay with your face being seen on another body? And we can bring in a body double in that sense. Sometimes that it happens at the last minute too, where it's like, actually, no. Like, I don't know that I can do this, or so many things came up, and it's like, great, that's okay. We'll work from there.
So how do you take care of yourself in a position like this?
A lot of therapy, but also a lot of closing out rituals and things
Oh.
like that. So that it's like, I know that I'm not taking this work home. I'm going home. It's the end. I clocked out. That's the end of the day. And a lot of times, part of our practices are helping actors come up with their closing out rituals or like how to get into that character to show that like separation of character and person. Like a lot of times, like, you know, for like, let's just use Law and Order SVU. It's like, you are not that sex worker. I just want you to know when you go home, you're also not that doctor. It's the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going home from like New Amsterdam being like, man, that was a tough case of the mumps. And I lost one. No, that actor will go on to do other things, possibly come back on the show because it's a procedural.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you think that when you're a director, you can make that kind of separation of not taking the work home with you, or is it just too all-encompassing?
Well, we're in charge of the world in a specific sense, I want to say, as a director. But I also think it's like, sometimes it's like, I think of myself as an aunt, like a cool aunt, taking care of someone's work. Because I didn't write it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Unless I was devising it with a company, I didn't write it. So it's like, I am taking care. And what is the best way to take care and showcase this work? So yeah, I sometimes take it home, but I do have like moments that I can try to switch off and turn off. I have like watch a lot. I play a lot of D&D and watch a lot of television. But sometimes just letting the work on you in the middle of the night will help you unlock some problems. But it's, having a good support base is like the other thing where it's like, yes, I have taken this work home and I need someone else to help me get out of this. And like asking like friends and family, it's like, do you have space for me to like rant at you for a second? And I want you to know that I'm not looking for solutions. I just need to like yell for like, no, 10 minutes.
So how do you make this life? I mean, you clearly work hard and are smart and talented, but how does all of this happen? You say that you shut off at some point, right? And you take care of yourself. How?
By the behest of my therapist. I have a great therapist that helps me in those aspects. But like making this life is choosing it every day in that sense, and knowing that there are days of lull and low days, and there are days of like, oh, I don't have a job this month. What are we doing? And grappling with the restlessness. I am a very restless person. So sometimes in like the off months, I'm like working on sketches. I'm maybe writing. I'm reaching out to folks being like, hey, you want to collaborate on a thing? Do you want to work on a thing with me? What are you working on? How can I get in on the ground floor? But also like taking moments to have like sacred time with friends, like, love The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. Not because I love the show, but because I have kind of a ritual with friends in which we get together and we kind of catch up, and it's like, it's on Monday because that is when The Bachelor and The Bachelorette happens, and we can have dinner at a friend's house and we sit, gab, eat, watch. We don't really watch the show. We have watched the show.
It's just on.
It's on. It's the excuse. It's the time. It's next to us. We're watching, but we're like also like catching up, giving advice, that kind of thing, and it ends up being like a very late night a lot of times with a lot of like adult slumber parties where we're like, yeah, we're sleeping over. It's fine. We're all on the couch. We drank too much. The trains aren't running. This is where we'll spend the night.
So what advice do you have for women and non-binary folks, especially those of color or from other marginalized groups? Global majority, but minority in these spaces often, right? For people who want to get into theater and film, whether they're younger and that's going to be their career of choice, or they're making a transition.
I would say like finding community has been the biggest thing, but also getting out of your own way to reach out to the community. That's like always my biggest hurdle. I'm like, I have the perception of being busy. And everyone's like, well, but you were busy. And I'm like, I wasn't. I was at home. I was at home doing nothing. And like reaching out, and sometimes not even just for jobs and things like that, but just to continue to connect on a human base and a level to like be like, let's get drinks. Or it's like, I understand that we're all strapped for cash. Please come to my home. I have alcohol. Or if you're sober, I have tea. I also have like ADHD, so I have a friend in which like I know that being at home by myself sending these emails, I won't get it done. A lot of procrastination, a lot of like solitaire cash on my phone. And so I'll like text my friend and I'll be like, hey, you want to have an in-office day? And she'll be like, yeah, we'll get together. And it's like that mirroring exercise of like, someone else is doing work, so I can also do work. So we'll go to like each other's apartments and like mirror each other and like send out emails. Or she was editing her reel one time and I was like, great, send it to me. I'll look at it and we'll give each other feedback and be like, can you please read this email and make sure that I don't sound like an asshole. But yeah.
Smart. Very smart. All right. So we have to wrap things up, but what are you excited about right now?
I am excited about this play origin story that I'm working on with Nina Key. I'm also excited about some of these audiobooks that I'm working on with graphic audio. So if you're into, some sci-fi, some fantasy, and some of them are romance, it's a full cast of actors and a narrator, and they do a lot of novels, and so it's a fun time. So get into it.
Ooh, well, thank you so much for joining me, dear viewers. This has been Badass Lady Folk, another episode down. I'm your host, Christine Stoddard. Tune in next time. Bye.
Bye.